Got it. Um, it brought me from a point where I was really having difficulties to where I've taken control of my life, my career. I'm a better husband. I've been lucky enough to be married for 33 years. And I am super proud to see Max here to be this, you know, connect with yourself at your age. You're going to have a good life. So
That's what I'm trying to tell him. Thank you so much.
it took me 48 years to have the courage to look inside, and you hear me tear up because it's a life changer. So I'd like to master meditation. I've got down heart math pretty well, and this has allowed me to be on 2 different boards for charities. So these are my dreams that are coming true right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I tear up. These are happy tears. So
Yeah.
I apologize for this is about connecting with yourself. And for me, it brings out tears sometimes, but they're tears of joy because now I'm able to do what I've always wanted to do. And that's working out with Paul, getting in shape. My wife's involved with this community. It is awesome. So I'm just waking up as a human being. It's awesome.
I love it, Jeff. And I'd love to hear how what you learned with the heart math stuff compares to what we talk about today.
Sure.
And if I hear you right, what you're saying is that was a very useful tool to use for stress. And then now that you've combined real food nutrition, some good fitness, and some other health things, like now your life is really opening up.
It's a healing process, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So
Yeah.
I can't, my future, I look forward to it. So it's awesome.
I love it. So I look forward to hearing a little bit about more about that as it's compared to what we're going through a little bit later.
Sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jeff.
You're welcome.
And then Rayanne, what you got? Do I need to unmute you?
No, I did it. Hi. I try to meditate and focus. And I mean, I'm a Christian, so I try to do it with my Bible and that type of stuff, prayer, relaxation, all that kind of stuff, and focus on my faith. But I know I would benefit from just doing meditation, just to get in my own mind, just for personal health and everything. My biggest struggle always is staying focused and not getting distracted. So I want to learn to meditate. I know I want to say the right way, but learn tools that help me stay focused. I worked with Ashley at the Combine, and then I joined Paul also, and I did pretty good for a little while. I'm struggling again right now. I have some major personal issues going on. I'm going through an extremely difficult time in my life. But I do believe that meditation, and that would probably help me. It's affected all areas of my life, including my prayer life. I tend to run and hide when things go on instead of leaning into things that could benefit me. So anyway, I just want to learn how to meditate, or how, like I said, tools or
how to do what we need to do.
Trick. Yeah. What are the little tricks of the trade? Yeah, exactly.
No, and I appreciate that too. So we're definitely going to talk about this whole idea about when you try to do it feeling like your mind is super active and feeling like you're doing something wrong or something along those lines, or you're not doing it right, or you get a little bit frustrated with it. So we'll talk about that today. And if I hear you right, Rayanne, what you're saying is you're looking for something like this because you have these life situations, and you feel like hopefully it would be something that would make these life situations a little bit easier to deal with, or something like that, right? Yeah, so for sure. And it definitely does, because I think we all can acknowledge that our life situations are going to come and go, and there is not anything that is going to stop that from happening. I used to think, I said it in my little intro video, I used to think, oh, when I get meditation figured out, then my life is going to be like smooth sailing. I mean, life is life, right? But it's how we show up. And Rayanne, the fact that you're noticing your struggles and your difficulties and things like that, that's the first step. I think that's really powerful. And that's one of the things that this is going to enhance, is the ability to see what's happening with your life as if it was a movie, less like you're in the role and getting beat up by all these different things. You get to step back and see it for what it is, you know? So anybody else have anything about why would we consider meditation and or mindfulness? I thought that was really good. All right, cool. So if you can bear with me, I'm just going to jump over and just share a couple things real quick. So I would say, in addition to the things that we just said, understanding what's happening is very useful. And what I mean by that is I've put a lot of thought into this. I don't think I've heard this anywhere, but I've, you know, a lot of people might ask the question, like, you know, is this something that we've needed our entire existence or our entire lives? And I would think probably not, because if you can imagine living off the land, and I'm reminded of this anytime that I go backpacking or something like that, living off of the land and having a very simple existence, not saying that it was easy, it might have been very harsh, but it was a simplistic way of living. When I'm going on a backpacking trip Sunday, we'll be out for 5 days. And every time I do something like this, I'm reminded about how everything gets distilled down into exactly what you need to do to live. And that's it. And there's some kind of a peace and joy in that. Now, what we can do is contrast that. And I don't even have to say this, like contrast this to the modern world, like what we're going through right now, right? So someone living that simple of a life may not have needed a practice like meditation and mindfulness. But now we've transitioned into agriculture, work schedules, everyone having to earn money and make a paycheck and take care of family and different responsibilities. And we've also introduced this really bizarre and relatively recent concept, which is time. All right. So add to that, you know, we've got social media stuff, you know, constant activity, constant bombardment from all kinds of different sources. And then I would say that one big problem that we have is expectations that get put on us by this modern world, you know, about having to have a certain job and look a certain way and have a certain amount of money and a certain family. Man, I mean, I struggle with that the majority of my life. Like, I'm 40 years old. I'm not married. What's wrong with me? People would ask me that, you know. Expectations put on us from parents and family members and friends and religion, social pressures, fitting in. I can remember when I was a kid growing up, there was a point, I remember looking back, there was a shift. You know, early on, I just wore mismatched clothes. I always raised my hand in school. I didn't care what people thought. I was always happy. And then at some point, it transitioned into fitting in and wearing the same shoes that everybody else had and wearing the same clothes that everybody else had. And you know, you start getting influenced by like magazines and superstars and things like that. So we put a lot of expectations on ourselves. We get a lot of expectations put on us by other people. And if you combine that with this crazy modern world, we just have a ton of mental activity. That's it. And what I like to call it is we're habituated to thinking, right? So the reason that we might want to meditate is because we are thinking all the time. And when I say habituated to thinking, I mean that if you're not paying attention to it, this is going nonstop all day, every day. And anytime you take a moment to sit and just notice what's happening, I mean, who knows where you are, but you more than likely you're not where you're at. You're somewhere else up in your head. And that happens from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And you can imagine as a kid, you know, like when you first started to learn language and you learn to talk to yourself and have imaginary friends and play, you know, with GI Joes or dolls or whatever, you start to cultivate this capacity to talk to yourself when you're alone. And then as you get older, you keep reinforcing this talking to yourself thing. Not that it's a bad thing, but then you start to throw in everything that we just talked about with all the pressures and the modern life and being bombarded with all this different information. We just have constant mind activity. And that's where a lot of our suffering comes from. So we're thinking all the time. We are thinking when we should be focused on something else that's right in front of us. Something beautiful sometimes, you know, a lot of times I'm at the dog park throwing a frisbee with Conan and my thought is like, I need to hurry up and get home and finish getting ready for tomorrow or something like that. And there's a beautiful freaking sunset. And sometimes I can catch it and remind myself, but you know, a lot of times we're thinking and this thinking keeps us from being very comfortable not doing something. So how many of us have a hard time coming home and just sitting at the dining room table and not doing anything? Like not listening to music, not turning on the TV, not vacuuming, not doing our to-do list, right? There's this compulsion to constantly be doing something. Oh, I got some free time. I'm going to start working on my to-do list. I got some free time. I'm going to go run errands. You know, it's like we always have to be doing something. And I think it's because of this constant mind activity. And it lends itself to this constant unease. We're always looking for something different or more or better. Okay. Can we all acknowledge or agree with that? Does anybody have anything to add to that? I see Mindy laughing. I don't know if it's because Ryan's joking with her or if she's resonating.
No, just like, I feel like it's so hard sometimes because you get caught in, you know, trying to check everything off the list and we forget the moments, like you said, the sunset. And you feel like, oh, well, I'll be happy when I get all the things on my to-do list checked off.
Yeah.
And there's just really no ease because I feel like there's always something else. But yeah,
Never
I find
ending.
myself.
Yeah, it's like
What?
situations. It's never ending. It's like, and now what? And then what? You know, and so
Yeah.
it's like we have to.
I feel wasteful. I feel wasteful not spending my time doing something productive.
I know. This is the condition of the modern human being. I know. I'm right there with you. I think most of us are right there with you. Anybody else have anything to add to this? Can I see everybody in here? There we go. Hey, Ron Duplex is in here. All right. Nobody got any. Rand, do you have your hand up still or okay, cool. All right. So now a good question is, what do we do? How can we work with this? Does anybody have any ideas? Everything that we just said, if we kind of understand and can acknowledge the problem is constant mind activity that is not our fault. It's been strengthened over time since we were kids. And then you throw in the mix, like we said, everything about expectations and responsibilities and all that stuff. What are some things that we can do to work with this? How can we work with it? Anybody got any ideas? And of course, we're talking about mindfulness meditation, but I'm just saying from a practical standpoint. Chris, go ahead, my brother. I'm going to ask you to unmute. I think you have to do it yourself. There you go.
How's it going, everyone?
What's up?
So, it kind of hit me on one of the times where we had a blackout, actually. And that was when there was nothing around, like when there was a blackout and no power here, at least in my area, when they were doing the rolling blackouts. Even the hum of the refrigerator, the hum of everything, I think how we can work on it is getting away from all of that. Whether it's a drive out to, I don't know, the top of Summerlin Parkway for me, where there's nothing out there, where it's quiet when no one else is out, or finding that one park that's empty. I would say that's how you can work on it, because that's where, and then leaving your phone in the car.
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna have, you know, and just leaving that stuff away, because it was kind of surreal. I laid on the couch because I didn't want to move because it was hot, of course, you know, being Vegas and all. But it was like there was no hum, and then all I had was my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I learned, you know, from stuff we've done in the past, you know, on Sundays and everything, just tried to do the 2 and 2 when it was completely silent. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. You see a lot, right? So, but I love what you're saying. I think most of us can resonate with it. If you haven't acknowledged it, you probably can now, right? So you're saying, like, there's these moments in our life and throughout the day that we have these periods of space, and it's almost like you don't realize it, but when you think about it now, it felt very something, like spacious, like calm, like open, you know, like you said, like a nice drive. You don't have the music going, no one else around, a nice little spacious area, a park where there's not many people. You know, I post a lot about morning twilight, like morning twilight, there's nothing going on. And there's something enjoyable about that. And I think just acknowledging that, you know, when we're in those spaces, we feel something like that, I think is useful. So I love that, you know, just scheduling some ways to get away from things and maybe on your own a little bit. And the phone thing is absolutely crucial. It's almost like you have to have a reminder, but the reminder comes from the phone. But, you know, but the phone thing, if that phone is on you, like, it is so tempting when you have space to pop it out. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I love
and
that.
I can see all the questions about 2 and 2, if you wanted to touch on that, or 3 and 3.
Yeah,
They're asking.
We'll get more into it. So 222 is basically, we like to cycle through different focuses. So we'll do listening, feeling the body, and then focusing on the breath. And I like to get experience in each one of those different areas because I feel like they cultivate different skills and it just kind of keep things a little bit fresh. You know, so if you're sitting for 15 minutes, 5 versus 15 straight, you know, changing the focus is just a little bit more, I guess, fresh and interesting. So, and we'll mess with that a little bit today. So, but I love that, Chris. So again, we're talking about what are some things that we can do to mitigate this constant mind activity looking for space in everyday activities or making yourself get out in space void of the normal stuff or something along those lines. Is that what you're saying, Chris?
Yes, and I do it at work to walk away from the computer. I'll get up and there's little alcoves, and at least where I work, just step out of the door, step out for a couple minutes, and away.
Cool. I love that. I love that. So without even talking about meditation and getting all caught up in learning how to meditate, and whether you're doing it right or wrong or anything like that, if we can just take moments here and there to step away from the craziness and do it without our phone and take a walk, go for a drive, go to the park or something along those lines, you know, sometimes even go out hiking or camping or something like that. That's doing the same thing that meditation would be doing. So I love that. And that in and of itself would be a huge, huge fix here. So anybody else have any comments or questions? Thank you, Chris, for contributing there. That was great.
Oh, thank you. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Chris meditates with us most Sundays if we're in town. So in addition to that, which I absolutely love, and that's why I love these discussions, because I'm going to go back and make a bunch of notes and try to do some kind of a compilation of best practices or something like that. What I want to talk about is this idea of noticing your thinking. Okay. In the noticing, you're not anymore. Okay. So I'm going to, hold on one second if I can get to participants, or if you could mute yourself, Chris, I think that's you.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So this idea of noticing, all right, take a moment right now, and I want you to see if you can see yourself thinking. Where is it? All right, now come back to me, focus on me for a second. All right, we're talking, we're having a good time here at the Zoom thing. All right, now I want you to take a moment. I want you to see if you can notice yourself thinking or talking to yourself. Now, can we all acknowledge that we weren't for a moment? Did anybody find it interesting that when you look for your thoughts, they weren't there for a moment? Can anybody? Yeah, if you can, raise your hand if you can resonate with that to some degree. Okay, so again, if I'm thinking and talking to myself all the time, right? It's nonstop. If I'm not paying attention to it, right? Take a moment and see if you can see yourself talking to yourself right now. What's your next thought? It's gone temporarily, right? So the power of noticing is that one of the benefits is when you notice yourself caught up talking to yourself in whatever form that is, temporarily you're not anymore. And you can just do that over and over and over. Just try to notice yourself thinking, notice yourself talking to yourself. So in the noticing, I would say that temporarily you are completely present. Just like before when we engaged all the senses and I said, hey, take a moment, take a couple of deep breaths. We can do it right now. Let's take a deep breath, listen and feel. Cool, there's some space right there, right? All right, take a moment, look for your next thought. It's not there, there's some space too. When you notice yourself thinking, temporarily you're completely present. You've interrupted the thinking process, and then you have this capacity to work with it if you want to. You can come back to the present moment, you can reframe the situation, you can have a different conversation, you can choose to see things in a different way. But that noticing component is the first step. It's like the awareness thing that me and Rayanne were talking about. When you notice it, when you see it happening, temporarily it's not, it doesn't mean that it doesn't come right back, but in that noticing, now you have a chance to work with it. Does anybody have any comments or feedback on that? All right, cool. Do not feel pressured to. I'm used to asking questions and nobody saying anything, all right? It's okay. All right, so here's what typically happens in a normal situation because we are so autopilot with our thinking. We have a stimulus, we have whatever it is, a text message, a random thought pops in our head, a news thing that we just saw. We have the stimulus and we have an automatic reaction and an automatic perception about what's happening. And that, depending on what that perception and reaction is, it could be very tightening, very stressful, very something along those lines, right? Now, if we introduce this skill of noticing, then we have a chance to pause. And then we can choose the perception. We can choose our response. We can choose to reframe things just a little bit. Now, sometimes the noticing doesn't happen until you're off in it for a little bit. And that's totally fine too. I used this analogy a few weeks ago with a client, and it's like I could be sitting there bawling my eyes out about the loss of a dog or my father or something like that. And if someone comes up and just taps me on the back, like temporarily, I'm out of it for a second, right? Noticing takes you out of the cascade and you have a chance to work with it, okay? So what we're looking for is this ability to notice so that we can see what's happening. And then if we want to, we can change, the way that we're seeing it, but at a bare minimum, we've kind of stopped that cascade from happening. Some of you may have seen this in, I don't know if I use it in some of the real food talks or something like that. We have a ton of things coming at us at any given point in time. And then we also have filters that allow us to perceive the world in a certain way, because our minds, our unconscious and conscious minds, can't take in all that information at once. So we have to chunk that down into usable information. And what dictates that creates our perception, what dictates that is the way that we talk to ourselves, and the things that we let into our perception are based off of the way that we talk to ourselves. So our self-talk creates our filters, which also creates our perception. And it's also like a search criteria, meaning that we're telling ourselves what it is we want to look for out in our environment. So whatever it is I keep saying to myself on a regular basis, or whatever thoughts I let continue to come in a regular basis, if I'm not noticing them, then I'm looking for evidence in my environment to support that. All right, so that's why this piece of noticing is so freaking powerful, okay? So we came up with this a few years ago, 4 steps to creating the life you want. And it's noticing your thinking, coming back to the present is the first and most crucial step. And that's what we get from a meditation practice. And then like Chris said, I think it happens naturally when you're in some of these pristine environments and you're void of all the different stimulus. You have a chance to kind of see what's happening anyway. But this is what we're trying to do as we cultivate a meditation practice, okay? So does anybody have any comments, questions, or feedback based on that info just yet? No? All right, cool. Well, let's continue on. I think I got another question for us. Let's see what we got. All right, so someone had asked about the whole 222 thing. So let's talk a little bit about how we cultivate this skill of noticing. So does anybody have any ideas on how to cultivate the skill of noticing your thinking, aside from a formal meditation practice? No, not yet. Okay, so I think what Chris said, just taking some moments to get out in space, to acknowledge periods of time where you're not caught up in everything. Like I love the whole, like when you're on a drive and you're in a peaceful place, or it's both. I love the twilight in the morning, there's just nothing going on. It's so much easier to create some space through that. This is why we might want to consider a meditation practice. So let's talk about what this is. Meditation, and Rand had brought up the religious piece earlier. I remember when we first started teaching this, I think it was one of my first big group classes we called it Sonia's SuperHumans. And I remember Adriana Reyes, when we started getting into the meditation piece, she raised her hand and she said, hey, my Lord is Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior is Jesus Christ. And I don't know that I believe in something like this, So we had to have a really good discussion about what it is that we're doing here. I think the perception of meditation is that it's complicated and that it's like a religious or Buddhist based or something like that. What we've done with meditation is we've learned some teachings from some great maybe methodologies, but it's not religious at all. In fact, I would say that meditation, if you have like Rayanne said, a devotion every day, a quiet time, it's going to make that a better quality quiet time, because anything that makes you more present and gives you this capacity to notice when you're not on what you're supposed to be on is going to enhance that experience. So if you're in a devotion and your tendency is to get distracted and cut it short and do something different, or get frustrated or to skip it or something like that, having this skill of noticing is going to keep you from getting distracted. It's going to help you stay on that, whatever it is. Meditation, as opposed to what a lot of people think, is not about not thinking. So again, I don't mean to keep picking on you, Rayanne, but Rayanne had said earlier that it's kind of frustrating because you're trying not to think, but then you're thinking all the time during your little meditation session when you try it, and it makes you kind of want to give up on the process. So meditation is not about forcing yourself not to think, because the reality is that your mind is going to think just like your heart beats. You can't stop it. I dare you to. I dare you to stop yourself thinking. Try to do it. In fact, if I set a timer for 30 seconds, most of us are going to be off in some fairy tale, right? So we have to acknowledge the fact that the goal of a meditation and mindfulness practice is not to get to this Zen state where we are thought free. The goal of meditation and mindfulness is what? Based on what we just said. Mindy, go for it.
I was just going to say, so in a nutshell, you're saying that meditation is not necessarily being free of thoughts, but noticing your thoughts.
That's all I'm
That's
saying. That is exactly it. Okay. So what
So
I'm
I can
saying,
think, I can be thinking, but still meditating because I'm noticing my thoughts.
absolutely, that is what meditation is. You know what's so fascinating is when you study some of these great masters. Like I love Charlotte Jogobek. She was, I can't remember how old she was when she passed away. She was in her 80s, I think. And you listen to some of their teachings, they would have these 3 and 6 and 7 day sessions where they would sit like nonstop this whole time, right? And it was brutally simple. It was so elegant. And they all say, like, you would think that a monk doesn't think, right? Has complete control over their mind. Monks are human beings. Monks are just like all of us, right? What they say and what they all acknowledge, what all the great masters acknowledge is what you want to do is notice what's happening, right? So it's almost as if in a meditation session, the more that you're thinking, the more practice opportunities you have, as long as you have the intention to notice yourself thinking. It's a fascinating little game. So the expectation of thinking that we have to have to have a good meditation session, it needs to be void of a lot of thoughts, is setting us up for failure because it's impossible. We're going to be thinking. Now, some may feel a little bit easier and a little bit more spacious, and that's just like anything else. You go to the gym and some days you feel on it, you feel alert, you feel great, right? But you still go through the process. Some days you go to the gym and you're not feeling it, but you still go through the process, right? I'd say we want to have that same kind of attitude with meditation and not have the expectation that we don't want to be thinking all the time. All right. So, and we'll clarify this here in just a moment. And it's not about, I think we've already mentioned, it's not about feeling great, right? So a lot of people, okay. So like Jeff was saying, a lot of times a meditation session or just getting in some space or something like that does feel good. All right. There's no denying that it can make you calmer and cooler in the moment, but it is not about that. It is about cultivating this skill of noticing your thinking, because that's the powerful skill that we want to use in our everyday life. Now, a lot of people, especially starting out, will use meditation time to meditate on something like Star Wars. They use the term wrong, because I remember several situations, I remember Yoda at one point says, let's meditate on this, right? Which implies that they're going to be thinking about something. So meditation is not a time to think about things, but you're going to think. But if you're deliberately thinking about something, if you want to use your meditation time for envisioning, thinking about what you want, goal setting and stuff like that, all those things are really powerful, but that's not meditation. Meditation is something else. All right. It's cultivating the skill. So meditation it's like a mental workout. I like to make the analogy of every time I do a curl in the gym, I am strengthening my bicep. I am strengthening my capacity to do a curl. So when I sit in a meditation session, every time I notice myself talking to myself, then I've just cultivated the skill of noticing my thinking. And so in that sense, it's like the more thinking that I catch, the more practice I'm getting. And that's exactly what it is. So meditation it's all about having a focus, and it's useful to have a focus so that you have this backdrop to notice you're talking to yourself on. Having some kind of a focus, and then having this intention to sit there, and it's almost like you want to say, I want to see if I can catch myself talking to myself. And as soon as you do, you simply come back to whatever focus you chose, and then you just repeat that process over and over. So as we did in the beginning, like if we take a moment right now, eyes open, let's engage the senses for a deep breath. We're just going to listen and feel. There's some natural space, right? Now, if I said, let's do that for a minute, within 15 seconds, most of us would be off in some kind of a thought process, right? Very hard to detect, but at some point, because you've had this intention, I want to notice myself doing that, at some point, you're going to notice yourself talking to yourself. And what do you do when you notice that? You come back and you engage the senses again, and you create more space. And so you're cultivating, just like repetitions in the gym, you're cultivating the skill to notice yourself talking to yourself. and you're cultivating the skill. If you decide to come back and refocus on your focus, you're cultivating the skill to come back to the present moment. What do we think about that? Does anybody have any comments or feedback? Nothing?
It all sounds good.
Oh, thanks, Lamont. What do you got to say about it?
I find myself doing that sometimes already.
Like naturally?
Yeah, one of the things I love the most is like riding my motorcycle, because there's no distraction. I can't be on my phone. Obviously, it's just me, the bike, and it's just peaceful. Try not to think about the everyday stuff, and not the kids, not the work, just me and the road. Just focus on the road and just let the wind blow.
Yeah, dude,
exhilarating.
That's exactly it. So you had an intention, you go on your bike ride, right? This is a special time for me. I'm going to go on my bike ride because I want to get away from all this stuff. But inevitably on that bike ride, that stuff starts to creep in. And then what do? You notice it and you're like, no, this is not a time for that. I'm focused on this right here. That's exactly what we're doing in a sitting session.
Especially because we know how drivers are out here. So, you have to focus on what
you got to be focused. Yeah, no, man. Nothing else. That's one of my big reasons for not wanting to ride bikes, because it's so dangerous. But that's exactly what we're doing. Now, what I would say is that, first of all, having this intention to be like this in these different life situations is also cultivating the skill. I think most of us, so it's like, again, the workout analogy, right? I could choose not to have a dedicated workout and go to a gym. I could just say, hey, I'm just going to be active all the time. I'm going to go for a hike. I'm going to try to use my functional fitness. I'm out here freaking moving logs and helping around the house and mowing the lawn and all that stuff, right? But I think it's useful for most of us to have a practice training session, which can be very, very short, where we're cultivating that skill. And then also have the intention to make it show up in everyday life like you're doing. That's exactly what we want. We want for anything that we're doing to have some intention behind it. If I'm working on my computer and I'm working on some kind of a project or a presentation, I want to be focused on that. And I don't want to tab over and look at Amazon or Facebook or whatever else my temptation is, right? But if I notice that, then I can go, oh no, I need to come back to this. And you're saying the same thing with your bike riding. So thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. That's exactly what we're talking about.
I'm 29 years old and I don't have social media. And it's for that reason.
Good for you, man. Well, I got kicked out of Facebook and I can't log back in, even though I've showed them my driver's license and everything. So I'm like, you know what? Fine. I don't care. I'm done.
Probably for the better, right?
That's right. All right. Anybody else have anything on that? Is it making a little bit more sense now? Can we not be so hard on ourselves about like having a perfect session? What you got, Mindy? Did you unmute?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think that the being intentional is important, because I find myself, like, if I wasn't creating that time, like you said, on your bike, like I used to sit down in the morning before the kids get up, before they can bother me. I sit down and I was trying to do, like, when we're doing church stuff and like journaling or affirmations and just writing things down and getting the thoughts out, and then having a little bit of space to have a quiet time after writing. I found that helpful. But then if I don't get so caught up in the stress of worrying about, you have to be quiet during meditation. Now, I feel like just saying that earlier, like, mind blowing, that I don't have to be quiet. I just have to recognize the thought. So it's going to be easier, I think, now. I don't put as much pressure on myself. But I think also making the intentional time is important, because we do get busy in our day and it's easy to do that. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we do need space of time, but this is the realization that I think was the biggest game changer for me, because I can't even tell you how many meditation books I read. I'm like, I gotta get this figured out. Now this book didn't do it. The next one's gonna do it, And then when I realized it, I don't know how it all came together, but it just, like, at some point I had this, from practicing all the time, I had this aha. I was like, the goal is not to think. The goal is to see what's happening and to come back, and to see what's happening and come back. And yes, I agree. We need a dedicated little training session. It can be 3 minutes. And then to be intentional with everything else that we do as much as we can is also a meditative or mindfulness type practice. I'm going to be intentional with my work. Like you said, Mindy, I'm going to be intentional with my little quiet time to myself, where I'm working on my goals or my time with my kids or something along those lines. So I think the big takeaway from this little section here is don't be so hard on yourself. Don't have these expectations that it's supposed to be a certain way. It is what it is. And in fact, when you see it like that, you start to see life is just like that, right? So my meditation session almost identically mirrors what's happening in life, right? So I don't want to have an expectation of things being perfect in my meditation session, just like I wouldn't expect them to be perfect in my life, right? I just want to have this ability to be there and see what's happening and come back to the present moment to some degree, okay? All right, I love that. Anybody else got anything? Someone, go ahead. Who's that? Oh, Lamont, go ahead.
Yeah, life is just about, it's pretty much you plan and improvise, because your plan it's not foolproof. It's not gonna be 100%. So there's things that's gonna come about that you're gonna have to improvise. And just as long as you're making steps forward daily, then, the rest is history. Just worry about what you can control. That's it. Keep moving forward.
That's a good little quote from Lamont. Pro tip, plan and improvise. I love that. All right, so this is a good little diagram, okay? So we're cultivating presence in a meditation session using a focus. We'll talk about focuses here in just a moment. And that focus can be anything that you want. I mean, it can literally be just looking for your thoughts, right? But whatever that is, at some point you're gonna notice yourself thinking. And then when you notice that, you gently come back to whatever your focus is. Now, sometimes what's difficult about this is your thoughts can be really, they can have a really strong gravitational pull. Like, it's almost like, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, but I need to think about this. Like, this is really important, especially when you get into, I call it, you get into one of your holes, right? You have a really big personal situation, or a breakup, or the verge of a breakup, or the death in the family, or something along those lines, right? There's these things that they keep coming back at you, right? The attitude we want to have is that during this practice session, I am there for this, and that's all I'm there for, because I'm there to cultivate the skill. Just like in my workout in the gym, I'm not there to do it. I shouldn't be going over and tabbing and checking my phone and texting people while I'm working out. I'm there for my hour of power, and then I get out and I can do whatever I want, right? During my meditation session, the temptation is going to be, oh yeah, but this is really interesting. Oh wait, I want to take a note on this. Oh wait, I need to cut this short because I need to get going, because I got to cook breakfast and stuff like that, right? It's like you want to have this dedicated time that is just for this. And I recommend starting really small, and then notice those temptations, because those are thoughts too, okay? So we're cultivating presence using a focus. We notice thinking, and we come back to presence using a focus. So when I notice my thinking in a sitting session, I'm cultivating the skill of noticing my thinking. That shows up in the rest of my day automatically without me even trying. This is where the Jedi stuff comes in. As I'm going throughout my daily life, I'm like, oh, ooh, there I go. Oh, wow. What that person just said kind of triggered me. Interesting, right? Because usually what happens is stimulus response, automatic. We're off in the races, right? But now automatically you start to, oh wow, that kind of affected me. Oh, I feel a certain way right now, right? Versus just being in it, okay? Now, when you choose to come back to your focus in a meditation session, this is cultivating the skill of coming back to the present moment. And again, throughout your normal day, throughout your normal life, as you notice yourself caught up and triggered or whatever it is, you can also choose to come back to the present moment. Like Lamont was saying, you can choose to let that go and focus on what's in front of you, okay? This making sense for all of us? Thumbs up, maybe?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, awesome. Let's see what else we got here. All right, so let's do some practice stuff. Now, has anybody got anything else? Any comments, feedback, snide remarks?
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
If we're having those thoughts, like not in a meditation, like me and Ryan have this, I guess, strategy we've been using. I don't even know where he came up with it. Is like just to get it out of our head, we tend to write it down, like whether it's on our phone or on a piece of paper. That way we could like get it out of our head. It might be something important we want to remember, but it's like jotting on your phone or your paper or whatever. Like me, it's usually a task. I'm like, don't forget that. And I write it down, and then it's out of my mind, and then I can focus and go back. Is that something you suggest? Or
I love it. I mean, I think to keep stuff up here is like, once you start to write it down on paper or use a to-do list, or just like, take some time every day to sit down and just kind of, what's on my mind? What do I need to get done today? Something like that. Even though you kind of know, to get it down on paper, it just like, it releases a lot. So I love that. But what we want to be aware of is in our meditation session, I want us to think of it like a gym workout, right? If you have something pop in your mind that you need to do while you're doing Fran, you're not going to stop Fran and run over and take a note real quick, right? So, but the temptation is like when you're in your session, like, oh, that's a good idea. And you want to start, what you want to do is notice the tendency or the temptation to take a note or to stop short or to get irritated. I don't know if anyone's been in my classes before. I can tell you, like when I first started, if, I had to have everything perfect. Like if the lawn blower guy was outside in the neighborhood, like I wanted to run out there and yell at him and tell him to be quiet so that I could have a quiet meditation, right? Now I've learned to notice the irritation that comes from something like that. And in the noticing of the irritation, it goes away. It's so fascinating. Or I remember one time we had a little session at the gym. We were out in that little foray and a car alarm went off that was right by us. And I'm like, all right, guys, we'll just kind of give that a second. The owner will come out in a second. The owner didn't come out. And you're talking like a car, like within 12 feet, right? And I'm like, but then I'm like, all right, let's just notice the irritation that comes with it and sit here and come back to our focus. And it's just, it's bizarre. It's magical. But my point here is that you want to notice everything. That's the Jedi skill. You notice your tendency to want to take notes, to stop short, to even fidget and stuff like that. But anyway, to answer your question, yes, I love that, Mindy. That's a good daily practice to always be writing things down that are on your mind, or to take some time in a day to get stuff down, because it just kind of releases it. It makes it feel more clear. But in the meditation session, we're there to practice. Now, if I do think about something and I write it down, am I wrong for doing that? No, not at all. It's just like that's going to happen sometimes, but we want to notice the tendency to do that and then come back to our focus, whatever that is. All right. Cool. Anybody got anything else?
Well, I do have one question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Brianna.
So is there a specific time of day that we should be meditating? Should we do it twice a day, just once, or whenever we feel like it?
Okay, cool. Great question. So I think we want to get out of the mindset of the perfect time or the perfect situation. Okay. What we want is just to do it, right? Just like we'd say, hey, just getting a workout in, regardless of what time of day it is going to be great. Or just eating real food. Like sometimes we have our little guidelines about breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 meals a day, but just eating real food is powerful in and of itself. So I think the ideal time is going to be whatever works for your situation and your schedule, that you can fit it in and not feel like that it can be a quality session and not feel like it's rushed. Okay. So if I said, I think the best time is the early morning. Well, for some people, it's like they got so much going on in the morning, like trying to get out the door and deal with the kids and make breakfast and all this other stuff. When they sit for their few minutes before all that, the only thing they can think about is, I got to hurry up and get this done. Right. So it diminishes the quality of that session, or it could potentially. Right. Or if I said, any other time, the same thing, like different people have just different life situations. So I would say starting out, whatever works for your schedule, just getting one session in per day, just so you cultivate the habit and the skill of sitting and doing this dedicated session. And then over time, sure, it might be useful to throw in multiple sessions in a day or something like that, but I don't think it's necessary. What you can do is start to increase the time that you sit. So in the beginning, I recommend usually maybe like 2 or 3 minutes starting out. And once you get used to that and you kind of feel comfortable with what you're doing, then you can start to increase that time. Does that answer your question, Brianna?
Yes, thank you.
So it'd be basically thinking about, what is the time in my day where I have a little bit of space that I'm not going to feel pressured to cut it short, or have a lot of other stuff coming at me in my mind that I need to hurry up and get through with this thing. I do like the mornings, like Chris said, that twilight, that before sunrise, there's nothing going on. It's peaceful. It's spacious. I like to try to get it in. For the longest time, I would do my workout at the 5 a.m. at, about 6, go for a walk, come back and then meditate. And now I'm trying to get it in before the 5 when it's super, super quiet outside. But there's no right or wrong time to do it. It's just whatever allows you to actually get some practice in.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Sorry, I probably went on that too long. All right, cool. So let's do, anybody else have anything? We're going to do just a little bit of practicing together. All right. Anybody? No? Okay, cool. Max, what you got? You got anything over there? Is this interesting to you, Max?
Yeah.
All right.
I like the part when you talk about the leaf blowers and everything, because I got Jazz over here.
Yeah.
While you're talking about that, she was barking and barking away.
Yep.
And she does it all the time.
Dude,
I like how you, yeah, because you get irritated when she does it, but I like how you're saying how try to get away from that irritation.
or just notice the irritation. Right? Hey, sometimes Conan sits with us. Actually, all the time Conan sits with us. And if it's hot outside, then he starts to pant. We got this perfect little scene going on, you know, and then sure enough, I get a little irritation that pops up from it. And then I have to come back. I'm like, notice the irritation, it dissipates it, it changes it, come back to the focus. So, all right, so let's do just a little bit of some practice stuff together. The first thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to use a little timer here, is we're gonna look for thoughts, and we're just going to do a few different examples of this. Okay, so I do prefer practicing with eyes open, because if we're trying to cultivate the skill of noticing our thinking for use in everyday life, our everyday life is spent with eyes open. So I think it's useful to have your eyes open, although it's not mandatory. Some people just don't like to do it. So you can close your eyes if you want to. All right, so the first exercise that we're going to do is just looking for a thought, okay? Now, what we can do, we'll try this out. I haven't done this on Zoom before, is I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go, and you're going to look for a thought. And then as soon as you have your first thought, you're just going to raise your hand up like this so that it can be seen on camera, okay? And that's for me to see. So I don't want you guys looking at the camera. I want you guys looking down, a downward gaze, you know, maybe turn sideways or something like that. But do we understand what we're doing here? So 3, 2, 1, go. And then you're like, it's almost like you have this attitude, I wonder if I can catch my next thought. But don't say that, because that's a thought. And that's how thoughts kind of creep in a little bit, is you say to yourself what it is you're doing, and you don't notice that because you're doing what it is you're saying, right? So what we want to do is 3, 2, 1, go, look for your next thought. As soon as you have that first thought, you're looking really hard. I want to see if I can catch it right away. Boom. And then you just raise your hand, okay? All right, so everyone eyes up on, or no, you can hear me, okay? So we're just gonna downward gaze, turn sideways from the computer, something like that. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, now if you haven't had a thought, go ahead and open your eyes. Now, Brianna, unless it's something perverted, what was your first thought? Do you mind sharing?
How I'm hungry and I need to eat.
Right away? That came that
Right
fast?
away. Isn't this so crazy?
I mean, it was literally 3, 2, 1, go. And then Rayanne, you had a pretty quick hand up. You don't have to share what it is unless it's just something kind of like a mundane or anything, but go ahead.
No, it was just my cat sitting here purring. So I'm like, it was just something about the cat. That's
okay. Okay, cool. So the majority of people here, it was about 5 to 10 seconds. And then Ryan went a little bit longer than everybody else. Okay. So this is an example of how introducing a focus, and in this case, the focus is what? It's looking for a thought. That's a focus, right? I could just sit here for 5 minutes and just try to notice my thoughts and come back and look for the next thought and come back and look for the next thought. When I introduce a focus, for most of us, I'm going to have some space. And like I said before, most of us within about 15 seconds are going to start to talk to ourselves, okay? So let's do another exercise. This one is we're going to do 3 in a row, okay? So same thing, downward gaze, sideways from the computer, something like that. I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go. And you're looking for that first thought. You want to see if you can catch it right away. Boom. All right. Next one, you're just going to wait. Boom. And then when you hit that third one, raise your hand up. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. Now, really have the intention to look for these thoughts. Okay. 3 in a row. When you hit that third one, raise your hand. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, cool. So if you haven't had that third thought, now, anybody have anything interesting about that? Any realizations? Anything? Any commentary?
I was waiting for you to say, okay, the next thought, then the next thought.
Oh, so in that you had a lot of space.
I had a lot of space.
Yeah. Max, anything? You got anything on that?
With what?
I said, do you have any commentary on that? Any feedback?
With like thinking.
Yeah. You were second or third to raise your hand. So what was that like? Were you able to catch all three?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was able to catch them pretty easily. The third one took a little while.
Right.
The first two were pretty fast, and my second one was the same thing I was thinking on the first one.
Cool. So that's kind of what I was hoping to have us acknowledge, is that once we have these multiple iterations of noticing thinking, then they start to kind of space themselves out a little bit. Right. So that usually is what kind of happens for a lot of people. And then maybe it comes back to being super fast and repetitive or something like that. Every session is going to be a little bit different. Okay. So let's try something else. Now, we've already done this to some degree. So again, I recommend eyes open, downward gaze, maybe looking off to the side or something like that. I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds. Mindy, you still with us? You've been over there, just a different seat? All right. So I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds. And all I want us to do is use listening as our focus. So if we can all just take a moment, get situated. Let's do a little practice here. I want you to listen with eyes open just for a moment, just listen. Notice the space, right? As soon as you start to listen, there's some emptiness, there's some openness, whatever you want to call that, right? Let's do it again real quick. Listen. All right. So that's the space that we're looking for. The listening can be refrigerator hum, air conditioner, dog bark, whatever you got going on in your current experience. Could be birds chirping, it could be bouncing around from sound to sound, but in the listening, there is only listening temporarily. And then what you'll notice is you'll talk to yourself a little bit, right? So I'm gonna set a timer. What we wanna do is, as we're listening, as soon as you start to talk to yourself, notice it, and then deliberately choose to listen again and acknowledge that space that comes with it. Anybody have any questions? All right, let's try that. We're gonna listen, ideally with eyes open, not mandatory. And 3, 2, 1, go. Let's get some practice in. And stop. All right, anybody have any comments or feedback on that very brief period? 30 seconds is plenty of time to get lost. What happens for me every time I'm in something like this, I'm always thinking about what I want to say next. And then I have to notice that, and I have to come back and do what we're doing, Anybody got anything?
It made me want to go to sleep.
All right, now, I remember one of my early, Deepak, in one of his earliest meditation books, he said, if you start to fall asleep in your meditation session, what do you do? Does anybody have any ideas? He says, get more sleep.
No.
He said, that's an indication you need more sleep.
What if you
This week I
meditate at
didn't get a
night
lot of
and then
sleep.
you just
Well, I mean, you may get a little practice in, then you may find yourself waking up in the morning. Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, this week my schedule was trash. I started work at 2 in the evening and I was getting off at like 3 in the morning. So I haven't gotten a lot of sleep this week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, meditation can teach you a lot about yourself, right? It can be a clear messenger for, hey, I need more rest. Or with a lot of us, I remember when I tried to meditate early on, I always fell asleep no matter what time of day it was. And now I realize it was because I was so toxic. I was not making energy the right way. I was carb dependent. And so I was always tired. I was just always tired. All right, cool. So let's try another little practice thing. All right. So this one is going to be feeling the body. Now, for a lot of people, this is kind of challenging. So let's try to use some examples here. So feel the connection of your feet on the ground. See if you can feel the pressure of your feet on the ground. Without moving your feet or wiggling your feet or anything, just feel your feet connecting with the ground. Can anyone not do that? All right, cool. Now, I think most of us are sitting down. Let's feel the connection of our butt up against the seat. Can anybody not do that? You can just raise your hand or something. All right, cool. Awesome. Now, I want us to place both of your hands out in front of you, palms up. And I want us to take a moment and I want us to see if we can just feel our hands. Now, you might feel like a little tingling or something. If you pay really close attention, you might feel a little bit of a pulse in your fingertips.
Yeah, that's what I got.
If you can feel a pulse, nod your head up and down. That's bizarre, right? Cool. So now most of us, except for Max, is at a golf course there, so I'm sure he's got some sun and wind. Most of us, if you're outside, you can feel a breeze. So I don't know how that feels inside. So let's take a moment, see if we can't feel some kind of air current on our body. Now, if you don't have air current, the act of trying to feel the air current also creates some space, right? Now, if you want to take a moment, maybe try to see if there's any, like do a little body scan, see if there's any area of tension or tightness, discomfort, itching. But again, even if you don't have it, just doing that, notice you create some space, okay? So feeling the body is getting in touch with using feeling for a focus, and you can do anything that we just talked about. If you have a hard time with feeling, which a lot of people do initially, you can feel pressure points. If you're sitting outside, you can feel the breeze, you can feel the sun on your skin, you can feel like a pulse or a heartbeat. I like to, as time goes on, I've gotten really good at just feeling the whole body at once. It's like putting your entire awareness inside your whole body, head to toe. Kind of hard to do sometimes, okay? So I want us to take 30 seconds and use feeling as a focus. Notice ourselves, talk to ourselves, come back to feeling, okay? Just 30 seconds. And you can bounce around to whatever it is that you felt most comfortable with just then, okay? All right, let's do it. Let's get just a little bit of practice feeling the body. All right, cool. Any comments or feedback on that part?
I keep wanting to close my eyes, so I got to bring myself back from that.
Totally cool. Like no big deal at all. Maybe just try it both ways, because what all we're looking to do really is notice the thinking. So again, when you feel there's some space, eventually you talk to yourself. We want to notice that and come back, and then just refeel. And that's the practice moment, is the noticing and coming back. All right. Now we've been going. It's a little over an hour. I want to be respectful of our time, so we're going to do one more little practice thing here. I'm going to finish with just talking about how to make this work in your daily life. And so you're more than welcome to duck out anytime you need to, but I feel like this is super, super useful. So if you stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes, that would be really great. So let's do our final focus. Actually, it's almost our final. We're going to do one more. It's going to incorporate all of them. So let's do a quick one with the breath. Now with the breath, it's a very traditional focus. When you breathe, when you focus on the breath, let's take a moment and connect with the breath in whatever way makes sense for us as individuals. All right, I just want you to connect with your breath for a few deep breaths. All right, now notice the space, right? We created the space. On the backdrop of that space, we should be able to notice ourselves talking to ourselves or lost in thought, okay? Now, if you don't have that breath kind of dialed in as vague like that, I think it's easy to get lost. So what I like to do is hone it into a specific aspect of the breath. So let's take a few breaths at the nostrils, feeling the breath, the sensation of the breath at the nostrils. All right, and then let's feel the breath at the back of the throat. All right, and then let's feel the breath at the level of the stomach or the abdomen. So as you breathe in and out, you should notice your stomach move in and out. All right, and then let's try what we call a total body breath. So as you breathe in and out, you should notice your whole body kind of shift a little bit. And then finally, I want us to just try placing our awareness at the pause between the bottom of the exhale and the next inhale breath. All right, there's a little gap when you finish breathing out. Before you breathe back in, there's this little pause. Let's place our awareness there for a few breaths. All right, cool. Now, we should all be able to acknowledge that in each one of those, every time we shifted, there was some space. It felt very open, very present, right? If we stayed on any one of those, we after 15 seconds start to talk to ourselves. So you can choose to focus on any aspect of the breath if you choose to use the breath at all. All right. So the breath is very flexible. I just think if you just say, I'm just going to focus on the breath, it's too vague. But if you connect with a specific aspect of the breath, the one that feels most comfortable to you, then it's kind of a little bit more honed in. It's easier to see yourself thinking. Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the breath piece? All right, cool. The final one is my favorite, which is just being present. And that is basically doing all of those things at once without being super strict and rigid. So remember in the beginning, I said, hey, with your eyes open, take a moment with a few deep breaths, listen and feel. Let's do that for a second. Listen and feel. And there you have the space, okay? So as you have a little session, you can do, a few minutes of any one of those, or like Chris was saying, we like to break it up and go, if I'm starting out with 3 minutes a day, I might go a minute focusing on listening, a minute focusing on feeling the body, and a minute focusing on the breath, and maybe finish with another minute of just using all the senses at one time. They all cultivate different skills. If one feels uncomfortable and the other feels easier, I think it's useful to try to cultivate each one because they give you different skills that you can use throughout your day. Maybe that will be a mindfulness number 2. I think we might be able to do that maybe in a couple of weeks, have another mindfulness thing or something like that. So does anybody have any questions or comments on the focuses? Uh-oh, we lost Mindy already. No questions or comments on the focuses? Okay, so let's finish with a daily practice, all right? What I recommend is just number 1, finding a place to do it and finding a time to do it that's conducive to your schedule. So I think it's just like with the food, right? If we try to overhaul everything at once, we may be successful for a little bit, but chances are we're probably, because of a perfectionist mindset that cultivates, all or nothing, chances are we're going to slip away from that, right? What I do like better is starting very, very small, very, very doable. So for you, it could be a minute every day, or it could be, I like starting my clients out with 3 minutes, right? So what we want to do is first find the time in our day that feels like it makes sense, whenever that is for you, all right? Someone could say, well, mornings are best. I don't think mornings are best. I just think it's whenever the time is that you can sit and do this for yourself, okay? Ideally undistracted. Ideally, you don't have dogs pawing at you and cats rubbing against you. And ideally, you're not in a situation where the family members are coming in and out of the room and all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't know where that is for you. I personally like outdoors. I like sitting outside because you have this openness, like Chris was saying, when you're at the park or on a drive, it just feels different when you're outside, but it's not mandatory. When you're outside, you have access to sounds of traffic. Traffic is one of my favorite focuses, by the way, when listening. You've got birds, you've got, just wind, breeze in the trees and stuff like that, right? So the first step is find your time and find a spot that feels good and feels right and is relatively undistracted. And then you just want to show up every single day, come hell or high water. All right. Think about it like a workout, right? If you're dedicated to working out, you're showing up no matter what. You kind of feel off. Sometimes you skip it, fine. Same thing's going to happen here. But the attitude, the mentality is, I'm just going to make myself do this every day. And let go of this idea that it has to be a certain way, that it has to be perfect, that you're going to have a good or bad session. You're just going to have a session, just like you're just going to have a workout, right? We just want to show up and cultivate the habit starting out. And then over time, once you get used to your 1 or 3 minutes, you can start to add to that if you want to. I think, you know, ideally people bump up 15, 20, 25 minutes or something like that, okay? Any questions or comments on finding the ability or the time or space to do it? All right, cool. The final thing that I want to say is, how do we use this in our everyday life? So meditation is a practice session where you're cultivating the skill of noticing, thinking, and coming back. All right. And I think it's very useful to have a dedicated session to do that versus just having the intention throughout the day. Mindfulness is putting that skill into practice. And so we just want to have an intention throughout the day to notice our thinking. So now let's let's embed a command in our unconscious mind to notice ourselves triggered, caught, upset, pissed off, distracted, whatever those things are. Let's have an intention now. And it helps to have that intention every day in the morning. I'm going to see it. The game is on. I'm going to see if I can notice what's happening and see what's happening. And the goal is to notice yourself caught and then come back to the present moment. Now, I'm not telling you what to do or how to think about things. You know, I'm just saying cultivate the skill of noticing first. Then you can come back and then you can decide if you need to reframe it, if you need to talk to yourself differently, if you need to make a plan, if you need to come up with some action steps or something along those lines. But the goal is to have this intention that now I'm going to use the skill of meditation that I just practiced throughout my day, and I'm going to notice myself in all its different varieties. And in the noticing, like we said in the very beginning, temporarily you're not. Temporarily you're present. Temporarily you have a chance to come back. It may come right back at you, whatever it is, but then you can notice it again. And what you're going to notice is over time, everything kind of changes. You're calmer, you're cooler. You approach life just a little bit differently, and it's just something that you're going to experience over time. Okay. Questions, comments, feedback, snide remarks. I think that's about what we got today. If you had to set an intention leaving this, it would be, I am going to find a time and a space in my day, to make this happen. And I'm just going to be committed to giving it a shot and not having a perfectionist mindset about it. Anybody got anything?
That was super helpful, Paul. No, I really liked it. So,
Cool.
yeah,
I'm
it'll
happy.
definitely help with everything going on with my mom and my family. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, you know, those life situations, they are what they are. You can't change them, right? But you can notice what's happening and try to minimize how much it messes with the rest of your life. Not to say that you don't care and all that, but you know what I'm saying, right? That it's the added thinking on top of it that is where the suffering comes from. And you know, we want to be present with it. So cool. I'm glad to hear that.
thank you.
All right. Anybody else got anything? It's a solid hour and 45 or an hour and a half, something like that. Well, I appreciate everybody showing up. I think it's great. I think me and Mindy were talking about it yesterday. You know, there's what we want for everyone is to cross this threshold to where a lot of these things become just a part of who you are. And I think a big way to do that is just constantly be involved in something. You know, come to a class, come to something like this. You know, just being exposed to information on a regular basis helps keep you move forward. So congratulations for just spending some time here. And I'm very thankful for it. It's a Saturday. You could be doing other things. So. All right. I think that's all I got. I did record this too.
Hey, Paul,
Yo.
I just wanted to thank you because, you know, this has simplified a lot of stuff for me. I'll overthink, obviously, and this gives me a direction. And I do set a time to practice already. So to add this in and continue to work and get better with this is just going to make my life more simple and allow me to do the things that I'm here to do.
Cool, man. Keep it. That's right. You know, do your other thing too. This part of it, keep it simple. Just a few minutes, noticing, coming back, and just trust that that's cultivating something really powerful for yourself. I'm happy you're here today, man.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Cool. All right. Anybody else? All right. We are out of here. Y'all enjoy it. I am going on a backpacking trip tomorrow. I'll be back in Vegas on Friday. Oh, go ahead, Rand. Oh, you're waving. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.